something we have seen since October 7, but probably people have seen even long before, especially if you live in certain countries, is the increasing alliance or increasing alignment between, I mean, in the title I called it progressive, but there's like many different factions, so sort of like overarching left and Islamist alliance that is happening. We've seen that in increasingly in with many different people. I mean, people like Greta Thunberg from the sort of the climate stuff. People like, if we are in the UK, Jeremy Corbyn, sort of the hard communist class warfare stuff, as well as a lot of people from the LGBT community or whatever you want to call it. The sort of what is it called? Queers for Palestine is, I think, one of those. I'm not even sure if it's like a full-on organization, but something you have definitely seen. So today we'll talk about all those different aspects. We'll talk about what is the source of that, and I'm not sure if we have a solution to it, but there's a lot to talk about, as well as we can still cover a little bit of the things from Jeremy Corbyn's Your Party in the UK, and maybe some recent stuff about what will happen in the UK, since a lot of the people we'll cover are in the UK. And because of that, joining me today are Marco and Richard with the Union Jack nicely behind them. Welcome to the reality show. Marco, before we go, I mean, we can just go by the list, but before we go further, any opening things you'd like to say?
Yes, I mean, it's not just a British event. This kind of unholy alliance, we've seen it throughout the world. I mean, one of the major examples was, for example, in Iran in the 70s, towards the end of its stint as Shah of Persia. Reza Pahlavi tried to appease the Islamics that were against him, and but by even imprisoning his own side, people that were actually supporting him. And what happened? Well, revolution carried on anyway. Islamists took over, and now we got the Islamic Republic of Iran, who's causing lots of problems all over the place. So we've seen this kind of event take over, at least for the last 40, 50 years. The only issue that initially was mainly a phenomenon that involves the Cold War. So Russia was supporting Arab states and stuff like that against the claim of the white state Israel. Therefore, the Palestinians were invented in the 60s as a group in order to stand against the existence of the state of Israel. And then you got the South African stuff that was plugged in as well, and the support from the USSR, the communists, and all this kind of stuff. And nowadays we've seen, as here, especially in Britain, since the 90s, there was this kind of match between Islam voters and Muslim voters and the Labour Party, the Lefty Party, which is a very broad tent, goes from the quasi-conservative centrist to the far left Corbynite, the proper communist. People even identify themselves as communists, so go figure. But since the beginning of the 2000, because of the war in Iraq, there was a divergence. Groups formed, the Stop the War coalition, all this kind of stuff, kind of started breaking this alliance. And until recently with the Gaza war, well, before then there was the Corbyn stint as leader of the Labour Party, who's a incredibly stupid, anachronistic anti-Semite, proper old style 70s, little man bag carrying communist, who became leader of the party and allowed anti-Semitism to become ripe. So much so that there was even an inquiry that said that the party, the Labour Party itself, the current party that is in power, broke the law on two instances because they were so anti-Semitic. And then after that, Corbyn was so kicked out, in quotes, and Keir Starmer, in theory, cleaned the party from anti-Semite. We've seen how well that went. And after that, we have actually seen a rise in pro-Gaza, pro-Islamic vote. There's a big splintering in the vote in the Labour Party. The people who used to vote for him, or for the Labour, because they were pro-Muslim, pro or Palestinian, pro whatever, anti civilization you can think of. They started setting up their own stall, and now there is a new party. The independents are supposed to be the jihadi votes in the British Parliament. I've got together with Corbyn, who's another independent, to set up a group and a new party called Your Party. I mean, come on. And they're effectively pushing the Scandal narrative. It's all anti-capitalism, anti-imperialism. The Scandal usual tripe and dead socialist ideas, which are not really dead, unfortunately. And that's part of the issue. We're now finding ourselves with sectarian voting, in fact, in Britain.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what Marco said there about Corbyn, I mean, Corbyn, he was kicked out of the Labour Party because he downplayed that report that Marco was talking about and its exposure of anti-Semitism within Labour, where Labour were told by the Equality and Human Rights Commission that they'd used unlawful harassment against people trying to make claims for anti-Semitism against Labour, and they'd used discrimination against those people as well because they wanted to suppress any Jews who were trying to complain about how Labour was behaving with them and with the policy towards them. So all of that was involved for sure. Now I notice you've used on the thumbnail for this particular episode, you've used that intersection between the green crescent and the hammer and sickle, and I think that kind of gets to the key of what we're talking about here. I mean, you could equally swap that with the watermelon, quite honestly, in the UK, because the watermelon, obviously, as we've had rammed down our throats, as it has stood for a pro-Palestine, anti-Jewish element on our streets. And of course, the watermelon is also the symbol in the UK for the Green Party, being the outside is green and the inside is red. Red being the colour of Labour, red being the colour of the red flag of socialism and communism. Always a bit confusing. I find that the red is for the right in the US, but red is for the left in the UK, and is far more closely linked to communism. And it's those intersection between their values, which is what brings them together. The fact that whether they're working for society or whether they're claiming to work for society or for God, they both want to tell the individual what to do and how to behave and to lecture them and to suppress them. So you must bow down to whatever the mob wants and whatever the leaders of the mob want, who claim they represent either society or, in the case of the Islamists, what Allah wants, according to them or according to their representatives.
Yeah, and we can stay a bit longer on the Jeremy Corbyn's Your Party, which I cannot wait for the convention final. It's supposed to be this month for them to pick a new name for. I'm not gonna swear, but yeah, have a normal name for the party. Even call it the left, call it the whatever you want. But yeah, referring to it as Your Party is becoming annoying. We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. And what I find like really interesting about both the Islamists and the sort of increasingly the left, or if we want to sort of the more extreme parts of the left, is how, especially when it comes to Israel, how unrelenting they are. Here is a quote from Zara Sultana. We are the only anti-Zionist party in the UK, talking about this new Your Party. The Greens are not an anti-Zionist party. They want to continue diplomatic relations with genocide and apartheid state. So she's saying there is no anti-Zionist party in the UK. We're talking about the UK Labour Party that just recognized the Palestinian state after October 7, after Hamas doing one of the biggest terrorist attacks against Jews. That's when we recognize the Palestinian state. And we've seen a similar thing in America, where you had a lot of Arab voters, where you had a lot of Islamists saying the Democrats are too pro-Israel for us to support them. So we're going to support the Green candidate instead. And you had a lot of, especially Arab majority or Arab, even plurality of constituencies or counties in America where they would rather vote for Greens or in some cases even Republicans instead of Democrats because they were used as too sort of compromising. So this is what is like the stance. And I made this point, similar point, like I think more than like a year ago, when people say there are no pro-Palestinian voices in media. There are no pro-Palestinian voices in media. Well, if your definition of pro-Palestinian or pro-Israeli is if you think Jews should exist, you are too pro-Israeli for our taste, then yeah, there's not as many voices arguing for outright genocide against Jews again. We're probably going to have to wait a few more years or a few more decades for that to happen. But yeah, when your definition of pro-Israel is believing in the existence of the state of Israel, believing that Jews have a right to life, that is like being too pro-Israel, then yeah, this is what you get. You get your Zara Sultanas, you'll get your this kind of pro-Palestinian people. I can add one more thing, and then I'll throw it to you, Marco. She also said that she wants to tie, or she wants to sever all ties to Israel and leave NATO, saying that this is that at the heart of both of these is politics of anti-Zion, or that in her heart it's about anti-Zionism and anti-imperialism. And here is, they always say anti-Zionism. When Jews, it's like saying, okay, I'm not against Jews. I'm against like 95% of the Jews, because that's the number that actually consider themselves Zionists. And again, we could go to the definition of Zionism to say what it is. But in reality, what it means is believing in the existence of the state of Israel. Being anti-Zionism technically isn't necessarily anti-Semitism, but with this amount of focus, with this amount of saying everything is about the Jews. And I mean, just look at the news for the last 2 years. It's like Israel is the only thing that's basically happening. Nothing else is being talked about. Marco, any thoughts on sort of the veracity of this particular section of the left when it comes to Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Yes, I mean, the left has historically adopted the Arab cause because Israel, being the white state in the Middle East, was seen as the imperialist state, even though the Jews and the Israeli built literally from the desert what the Arabs under the Ottoman Empire never really did. It was mostly desolated land, a few goats and a few villages made of mud and stone, and that's it. You needed the Israeli to actually set up the state and then make the area something that it's worthwhile living in. Desalination of water, agriculture, all this kind of stuff that nobody else did before the establishment of the state of Israel, before Jews moved into the area. So, but anyway, the left adopted these people because they were seen as the underprivileged, the oppressed by the imperialist Israel, and the oppressed by events. They are the poorer people, so therefore they must be the nicer people. After all, socialism is always for making everybody poorer, not everybody richer. That's why taxing the rich is their mantra. But the issue here is now that after the collapse of the Soviet Union and socialism has showed itself as a pointless political and economic model, they found themselves with no really cause. So that's why lefty try to embrace the environment stuff. They try to embrace the anti-Wall Street cause. They try to embrace all sorts of causes. The trans equity crap that we've been seeing for the last 5 years. The Marxist Black Lives Matters, all this kind of stuff. They've been trying to go behind some kind of cause to justify their existence. And suddenly Palestinians look like Yeah, that's a perfect cause. People who are absolutely doing nothing useful for humankind, people who live effectively on welfare, handouts, the kind of people that labor loves, really. So they got themselves behind them. The only problem that this is a bit of a miscalculation because the wide-eyed, do-gooding lefty doesn't realize that actually Islamists have got a plan. It's called Sharia law. In the end, they want to install Sharia law everywhere. And they do not see the lefties as their allies, but as a good, useful tool in order to reach power. That's why that's the MO of Islamists, really. I mean, we see it. I've seen it here. Because I came to Britain only 30 years ago. I actually seen this happen live, and I realize it's happening now in the United States as well. So these groups are acting really, really slowly. They realize that they cannot have an Iran-style kind of revolution in the West. So they're acting very slowly by starting building a power in local government, then moving to mayorships, then moving up to regional or state level the politics, and then they move to the national politics level where they can do significant damage. And we're seeing it here in Britain. We're at the stage where Islamists are actually in parliament hiding behind the cause of Gaza. And this kind of stuff is happening in the United States as well. You begin to see cities falling under Islamist, or they don't call themselves Islamists, but their ideology is that eventually getting rid of their stuff, or freedom from the West, and installing the Islamist Sharia law. Really, that's all they want to do.
Yeah, and they are all trying to outdo each other, that's for sure. And they're trying to claim some sort of moral superiority, but it's based on a false standard. And the standard is who's more anti-Jew. I'm more anti-Jew, no, you're more anti-Jew. And whichever policy is proposed, somebody always goes further. And essentially, the ultimate goal of that is the annihilation of all Jews. And then it would move on. Quite honestly, I can't see how it would progress any differently to that. I think what Marco's talking about in terms of the fact that the Islamists, for example, take the 18 points. I think it was 18 that the Muslim Vote organization were trying to suggest for all parliamentary candidates. And that included things like pressure for having Sharia pensions and Sharia-based loans for students, for example. And the point of Sharia is not that it's a different method, but that it's a Muslim-specific method. It's a Muslim-specific method of getting round the rules within Islam for how you can borrow money or pay interest or not pay interest, or get round all of those restrictions. But essentially, it always means that that Muslims and their fellow tribe members support and control that income. And of course, that income would come from the taxpayer. Because what they're talking about when they say Sharia pensions is they mean that the state pensions or the pensions in the public sector for being, doctors, nurses, civil servants, whatever, would have this element of Sharia pensions to it. So essentially, they want to be able to divert some of the money towards an area which they can control. The same is done within the charity sector. For example, mosques and Islamic organizations are set up as charities. That gives them lots of different statuses, lots of different ways of avoiding tax via the fact that they're charity status, and avoiding some of the other restrictions which apply all over the place to any other kind of what is essentially a business. And in many cases, these are businesses which are avoiding the regulations by looking after their own particular sect. I think that's a key part of what's going on. And of course, all of this is covered up by the left as well, with their sort of "be kind, be tolerant" mantra, which is essentially, telling you who to be nasty to. You can be nasty to those who don't conform with our view. You can be nasty. You don't have to be kind to everyone. You shouldn't be kind to Jews. You should tell Jews what to do. You should tell Jews to stop supporting the state which gives them protection wherever they live across the world. And of course, all of that's within the mix, I think.
We have a super chat from Wolfgang. Thank you so much. And somebody says churches do the same thing. And do you think we would argue against removing that also for the churches as well? No, 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 sort of. Yeah, the idea of like non-charity thing or like a charity or non-profit organization, I think, is to some extent a violation of rights and yeah, shouldn't exist. Uh, when it, yeah, Richard, you seem like you want to
Well,
jump in.
only that Marco's nodding along as well. We absolutely would argue for removing that. Well, we would argue for removing the restrictions on business in the first place, which is what charities are getting away with avoiding. Because none of those restrictions should be there for businesses. None of the restrictions should be there for anyone, and therefore none of the tax incentives and benefits should be for one particular group, which is in this case religious groups, and which some religious groups are better at exploiting some of those things, including having people live above mosques or within mosques under those charity status instead of paying some of the other taxes that other people are compelled to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's the one big problem that we have right now is the either the lobby system or sort of the mixed economy. The fact that you have people that can rely on either government benefits or use that towards the destruction of the kind of system we want. Again, I always said, and I think, for example, I know America has you can set up like Christian, Jewish, and I think even Muslim courts, but they are still fundamentally under American law. They are not separate. They only have the power that sort of both sides agree to as a sort of arbitration process. But once it starts becoming like a separate thing, which again is something I think Islamists do want to eventually see, is either sort of be granted some kind of autonomy, be granted some kind of, to start with, some kind of, family issues. This is outside of British courts. This is like our thing to decide. I know Israel, for example, has a problem with that. With the in the south, the Bedouin community that had, you have people, men that have multiple wives, them getting married under 14 or when they're, marrying young women, and yeah, that is not something that should be allowed. Should be allowed. There should be one sort of legal system across all of the UK, or technically, if you want to say, since it's like a united thing, like four systems for like Scotland, English, or something. But it's still fundamentally like one law that should be followed. And so when I think it was Richard who mentioned sort of people running over each other to prove that no, I'm more anti-Jewish. So we had the Green Party's leader, to which we'll go a bit later, but in their I think it was, yeah, in the conference, I think it was last month, the delegates passed a motion calling for Israel's military to be designated a terrorist organization and also for Britain to apologize for the Balfour Declaration. So again, what this is, it's saying Israel shouldn't have an army. Israel shouldn't have means to defend itself. Israel army should be disbanded. And again, apologizing for the Balfour Declaration. Is Britain going to apologize also to the promises to Arabs? I mean, Britain established Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, and a few more, but let's just stick with those: Jordan, Iraq, and Egypt. Iraq became a dictatorship, Egypt became a dictatorship, Jordan became a dictatorship. Many of them completely oppressed their citizens and attacked other nations, such as Kuwait. All of them attacked Israel at one place or another. Is Britain not going to apologize for that? But establishing the one free state in the Middle East that is defending itself, that is fighting for the one group that has been kicked out of everywhere, that had pogroms against it, including England itself. No, we're gonna apologize for that one. So yeah, this amount of running over each other to basically prove like no, we are the more anti-Jewish ones, which sort of goes to the something we talked before, and it's the changing of opinion polling when it comes to the elections in the UK. People might remember the last election, which was that last year?
Yeah, yeah. July
July.
24. Yeah.
Yeah. when it wasn't necessarily a big win for Labour rather than a big loss for the Conservatives. And now we're seeing increasingly shift to the amount of where I think the reform, the sort of right-wing alternative, is polling, I think, around like 30% of the national vote. And the Green that I've talked about them right now, the Greens are now polling over both the Labour and Conservatives. Not to mention when Jeremy Corbyn's party actually gets sort of like officiated this month, that might throw it even more. So, Marco, as somebody living in the UK, and I think we had an episode on Muslim vote. Is the Muslim vote getting so important, especially on the left, that you have people running over each other to prove they are more anti-Israel or anti-Jewish to basically get votes? And yeah, any predictions when it comes to sort of the current government and how that's gonna be?
Yeah, well, it is important and it is not important. It is important for Labour because, for example, take the current Secretary of State for Health. He nearly lost his seat against an independent that was standing on a pro-Gaza stance. So it's in his interest to appease the Muslim vote, of course, because he's not going to win the next one. Keir Starmer himself, I mean, I've seen some polls that actually say he's going to be unseated by one of the other parties. I mean, lots of the major people on the front benches here in Britain, people in government in important positions, risk losing their seats come the next election because they will no longer have the support of the Muslim vote. And of course, there's also, I mean, this whole business of sectarianism in politics is also enmeshed with the grooming gang and raping gang scandals that has happened in Labour-controlled local authorities in the north of England. We're seeing gangs of Pakistani Muslim people grooming young white girls because they were underage girls because they were white and they were picked because they were from deprived sector of society, really. So they were effectively victims in society and victims because they picked on them. So we're part of the political machination is trying to hide the responsibility that the left had in effectively looking the other ways, and various other institutions looking the other ways when these things were obvious. So that's takes a different, more sinister side, if you like. And then there is also the kind of culture of envy that we have nowadays. I mean, if you read Ayn Rand's The Age of Envy essay, I mean, that's quite obvious what's going on. I mean, the Muslims, Iran, calling for death to America, death to the West. Again, they hate not the fact that we are enjoying life, not the fact that we are to their medieval way of looking life, we are sinners, but they hate us because of the virtue we go, because of our freedom, because of the way we build stuff, because how we produce, and they want some of it. They can't be bothered to actually do the things we do. They can't be bothered to install the kind of systems that allow them to become richer, because to do that would mean to let control, leave people be free to produce and be rich. So they do not want that, but they're quite happy to take over what they found already made by somebody else. They like parasitism, they like conquer, they like taking over other people's stuff, and that's why they find this kind of similarity and keenness with the left. Again, socialists like to take other people's money. They don't produce anything. They want to destroy everything. But they expect wealth to be there, fall from the sky, from somewhere, and then they can redistribute it. Just look at your party's manifesto. Well, it's not a manifesto, it's a statement of intentions. Just look at what they say. They are quite explicit in the fact that they are socialists. They want wealth redistribution, anti-imperialism, this kind of crap that, it doesn't really wash anymore. But the Islamist sector of society realize that they are very useful idiots, realize they can use them. And the fact that they support them, they're always on their side, it's a proof that they understood how to worm their way into some sort of power, which eventually moved them a step closer to what they want to achieve, Sharia law.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so many different ways I could go in terms of what you guys have both said. Let me just make one quick point about the electoral state of the Labour Party and its victory, because that puts it in perspective. Sometimes a single statistic makes things clear. And Labour won a big majority. They won a massive landslide just over a year and a few months ago. They won 63% of all the seats, but they only won it with a third of the national vote. So it was a very broad victory, but very shallow. So very little enthusiasm for them, despite the massive majority. Those kind of massive majorities based on so little enthusiasm don't last. And this one's crashed and burned, or is crashing and burning before our eyes by every day and every cock up.
Yeah,
So
maybe I can just throw in so people who might not be familiar with the UK electoral system, despite it being a parliamentary republic, they do a bunch of local elections. So we have 650 or so constituencies. So it's a bunch of local elections. So Labour can, even with like one third of the vote, can still win more than 50% of the seats because they not even needing a majority in those local elections, but even just plurality. So that's why Reform, who I think had like maybe 15% or something like that, and only won like 4 seats or so.
yeah, I can't remember what the percentage was off the top of my head. I know they had 4 million votes and won 4 seats. And bear in mind, we're a country of 65 million, but that's includes kids. So I don't know what the exact electoral size is. Probably about 35, 40 million at a guess for who would be eligible to vote. So 4 million of that were for Reform then. But Reform, of course, is now doing really high in the polls, and recent polls put them at 32%, the Greens in second place at 17, and the two major parties who've dominated politics since forever down on 16% each. So this is as much a reflection on the failures of those two parties as anything else. And of course, both, well, we'll get to the Greens in a minute, but whether you're talking about the leader of the Greens or the leader of Reform, charisma next to the absence of charisma from particularly Keir Starmer is one of the factors that is making a difference, because that's the kind of age we live in, unfortunately. Now, I wanted to pick on one element that you raised. Marco mentioned the grooming gangs or the rape gangs, which is, obviously the gangs of mainly Pakistani Muslim men who raped lots of white working class girls in different working class towns across the UK. And a massive scandal that was suppressed and continues to be suppressed, but was suppressed for many years. And they're now they're trying to arrange under duress, because they tried to avoid it at every juncture, a national inquiry on the extent to which this exists. Even the Mayor of London has tried to suggest there's no such gangs in London, but the Met Police have finally caved to public opinion, and they are reinvestigating 9,000 cases of rape within the capital to see, whether they are relevant to this angle and this inquiry. But I wanted to just mention Jess Phillips. She's a Labour Party minister who's in charge of setting up this inquiry. There's an inquiry that's not set up yet. Can't even choose a chair because they're arguing over who will be the chair, and trying to make sure it's a chair that's sympathetic to how can I
Perpetrators.
Yes. But that's probably the most succinct way of putting it. Yes. Now her title, in case you don't know, is the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls. That is her job title. So that's why she's been put in charge of the inquiry. But of course, she's also in a constituency. I think it's a part of Birmingham she's from, with a significant Muslim element. And so, of course, at the same time, she's also voting endlessly for the same things that have traction with those kind of voters, including back in November 2023. Bear in mind, that's only a month or so, a couple of months at most after October the 7th. And she was voting then against the party line of a full ceasefire in Gaza, because she was obviously favouring her constituents who are Muslim. And I think a lot of this comes down to what you mentioned earlier, Daniel, which is the mixed economy, and the fact that within the mixed economy and within this kind of block voting, where people are set to vote under their religion or under certain aspects, whether that's their sexuality or their gender or their attitude to one particular thing, when they're blocks like that, there's a lot of trading of favours. There's a lot of cronyism, trading of favours and trading of opportunity, and that is what leads to the destruction in actual politics being based on reality and being based on any individual at all. It's all about blocks and sectors fighting each other for power and influence, and who has got the best pull and who can pull away from some other group that they dislike. And that's why it creates such a lot of infaction and infighting between different groups, which is a lot of what you're seeing and have seen as they struggle for dominance over their coffers and their policy.
We have a super chat from Bulmus. Thank you so much. He says, if money grew on trees, socialists would chop the tree down to get the money, then cry about how they can't grow anymore. You don't even need to use that analogy. That is exactly what happens every time. It's not even misunderstanding, but sort of, thinking that production just happens, right? I mean, people who have read Atlas Shrugged, industrialists, they'll produce, they'll find a way, they'll figure it out what to do, even when we make it impossible for them to do anything. So yeah, this is absolutely on par with socialists. It's I mean, I'm not sure if you guys read the political statement. Me and Michael went through it, of your party, Jeremy Corbyn's new party. Me and Michael went through it on Saturday, but it had freedom from poverty is something we're going to achieve, as if poverty is something imposed on you by other people that we need to fight against, or that we need to be saved by Jeremy Corbyn from. Before we move further, you sent me one clip, so we can play that one if I have it ready. Yeah, it's this one.
There's no need for that. We're on the same side, bro. No, we're not. Yes, we are, bro.
I'm not sure. Do you know when this was from?
That was from last weekend or weekend before. It was actually there was supposed to be a UKIP party protest in Whitechapel. Whitechapel is just
still exists?
Sorry?
Yeah, but it's minute. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's a legacy thing.
Whitechapel is an area of London just outside the city, the district, the famous financial district, and it's in an area which is, I think, it's the highest concentration of Muslims in Britain. And the area, the local borough itself, is actually run by somebody who was disqualified from running as head of a borough because of electoral fraud. But he managed to evade justice effectively and become the leader and voted again in this area. So, and it's a very heavy Muslim area. I mean, if you went there, you'd think you're in Tehran, to be honest. But there was a UKIP protest planned. They just wanted to go there to show a bit of racism, just to show that they are not happy with the kind of ethnicity that is over there. You can discuss on how stupid this statement is or not, but the fact that the protest was cancelled because it was the police thought it would have been too confrontational if somebody who's against immigration went in the kind of area where civilization is a short commodity. So they were forced to go somewhere else in London and did a protest, but at the same time, there was a counter protest that was allowed to happen. So you see all this bunch of Muslim supporters in balaclavas and masks running down the streets, protesting and saying, "This is our area. We say what happens here," blah, blah, blah. And there were some leftists, you see in there in the clip. There was a guy with what's it called? Stand Together, or whatever the group is called. Who was telling them, well, turn down the volume a bit, the narrative a bit, they were shouting Allahu Akbar, this kind of stuff. We're on the same side. And the response from one of these guys was, no, we are not. They state quite firmly what they stand for, these groups, what these masks, Muslim men are doing in our cities. They do not want to share the values of the left. Well, first of all, I said earlier on that there are affinity of values between the left and the Muslims, not quite the same values. That's a problem. There's affinity of methods and activity, but the values are diametrically opposite. The left purports to be for freedom of speech, equality, individual rights, gay rights, all this kind of stuff. While the left is the Muslim lot is mainly for Sharia law, segregation of women, an eye for an eye, chopping heads, chopping hands. That's the kind of stuff that they're pushing. That's the kind of progressive policies that these groups are pushing. So you see how the usual idiots, the left, is actually used by the Muslims so nakedly. And the sad thing that they actually don't realize. I mean, the Arabs are quite used to compromise with evil. We saw, for example, during the war, 20, 30 years before the Arabs were branded Palestinian, for example, we saw the Grand Mufti in Jerusalem strike an alliance with Hitler. I mean, Hitler himself wasn't very keen on non-Aryan people, but he hated Jews. They both hated Jews so much that they found in themselves to strike an alliance between the two of them. So this goes to show how much the people that hate the Jews are willing to compromise with whomever, which will allow them to express their racist hate for Jews and the state of Israel.
And both groups, both the lefties and the Islamists, think that using the other is their route to power. I mean, that's the essence of it. And they think they'll use them to get to power, and then they'll dominate once they're in by suppressing the other element of their coalition. And either way round, both think they're capable of suppressing the other, and that is why there's such a competition for the Muslim vote, or for those that are sympathetic to a pro-Palestine, anti-Israel vote. And that's why they're trying to outdo each other. And the Green Party is no different. And of course, that's why they do things like, take the Green Party leader, for example, Zach Polanski, who changed his name from his original name. Now, we're always being told about certain other people in British politics that their name isn't their real name. Tommy Robinson, for example. But anyway, I don't want to get diverted into talking about him, because that's a real difficult subject, to say the least. But anyway, Jack Polanski changed his name from David Paulden because he wanted to emphasize that he had Jewish ancestry, but was also, he's also against Zionism. So in order to put a cover for the fact that he's got a lot of views which align with the same kind of lefties and people that we're talking about, the best thing to do is make sure you've got a Jewish surname. It gives you extra credentials for making your case, even if those credentials are largely anti-Jewish in their essence. And I think that's typical of the left. Is that you change a word, you change a phrase, you have a slogan, and that's enough to cover you for what you're actually doing. A bit like the Jess Phillips job title, for example. She's safeguarding women, but she's trying to postpone and delay or scupper the inquiry into what would safeguard women, because those women are being attacked by the votes and voters and their supporters that she needs on another day.
Just quickly, I looked up Tommy Robinson's full name. Good on him for changing the Jesus Christ. And separately, fun fact, Whitechapel was my first view of United Kingdom. After I flew to London, I think I was stuck in the underground for a few hours because of the strikes or something, so it wasn't happening. And then, yeah, at like 9 p.m., I just got out of the Whitechapel station, which was the first station I like got out of.
It is a unique summary of London because I mean I've never been there to stand in the street to do this, but if you took a camera, you could film the towers of the Gherkin and all the city, and then you could pan back into the Tehran of Whitechapel and see many times Palestinian flags flying from lampposts and all the rest of it. And that would be London within 20 seconds of footage.
We have a super chat from Bulmus. Thank you so much. He says communists will free people from poverty by freeing people with money from said money. Not sure if I understand that one. But yeah, I mean, if nobody like poverty, the way we use poverty, especially in Western nation, is sort of like a almost like a conditional relationship between like how much do the people who have the least have compared to sort of what is viewed like as an average. So if everybody has nothing, then yeah, nobody's in poverty since the definition of poverty is wiped out by that. So yeah, maybe this is the way they can try to take it. We have about 10 minutes left and we covered one group that I wanted to cover, although the rest are going to be very similar, so we can maybe just quickly go by it. I think we mentioned it a little bit. I have a name for every of these groups. So we've covered the Red-Green Alliance, the sort of communist Islamist alliance. We have the Pink-Green Alliance, of course, the Queers for Palestine, the sort of the gays for Muslims.
Sorry, we should probably add also that the leader of the Green Party is also a homo. So, he kind of strides also across the colors, doesn't it?
Yeah, good to mention that. Yeah, he's a Jewish gay man, leader of the Green Party. So he kind of is all of the things, all of the groups that we were going to cover. But yeah, we've seen it here and there. We've seen also the way they talk about Israel. They use the term called pink washing. Israel for not killing their homosexuals, for allowing them to openly express themselves. That's pink washing. You're simply trying to hide the genocide. It's I mean, I don't know how much more. Not even I don't want to say like if it is anti-Semitism or what it is exactly, but that sort of like scheming Jews. Oh yeah, they legalized LGBT rights to commit genocide easier. They are nice to their gays, so they can kill all the Arabs. This is what the Jews are trying to do. I mean, this is the kind of mentality you are getting. This is the amount of hatred towards the Jewish population there is, that you'll have communities who would be killed if Palestinians took over, still arguing for them because of supposed oppression, which again is not real. There is nothing wrong happening in Gaza. By that I mean Israel isn't doing anything wrong. It's Palestinians who both have started this and are prolonging this. Marco, any thoughts on this one specifically?
Yeah. I mean, to accuse the state that has the largest gay pride in the Middle East, I should say probably the only one, and celebrate the people who actually throw gays off of building because they hate everything that they stand for, is quite fresh, isn't it? Especially coming from the alphabet people, all the queers and the creative people that seem to hate civilization so much, but choose to live here. They don't move over there. They don't want to experience how nice it is to live in a Muslim world and being gay. But also, there's a genocide currently occurring in Sudan, and it's something absolutely disgusting and terrible, and it's a proper genocide, and it's supported by the UAE, the Abu Dhabis, the Dubais. They're actually paying for the rebel force in Sudan to kill to go after civilians, population who's trying to escape the genocide, but they are targeted by these forces. But those things we don't talk about it because Muslim on Muslim, yeah, there's no Jews involved, so what's the point? It's a typical perceptual event that shows you that really they don't give a crap about the Palestinians. They just say the Jews to the extent that anything would be preferable to having a an Israeli state. So that every excuse under the sun they will exploit it in order to effectively paint Israel like the bad guys. And again, we're talking about the only relatively free and a democratic state in the whole of the Middle East.
If we're talking about the Green Party, why has the Green Party suddenly shot up in terms of its support? Partly because the main two parties have blown themselves up by being utterly useless and hopeless. Partly because of social media and the fact that they appeal to a younger demographic in the same way that a lot of the pro-Hamas stuff is fed via social media to the same kind of speed scrolling generation. I'm obviously talking about your generation, Daniel, even though obviously you don't. It's not universal, obviously, and not everyone's a moron, frankly. But obviously, many are led by their feeds and what they receive, and that in itself has produced lots of support for those who base their decisions on 10 seconds of TikTok video from the leader, Jack Palahniuk, for example, of the Green Party, and like that 10 seconds of disconnected content, they then go for him. So that's part of what's going on. And there's also this, Marco mentioned, the fact that everything is badged as economic inequality. And everything's done within that lens. Even the climate stuff that this guy talks about is climate inequality. So all of it is done is you're suffering, or there are people suffering because of the climate, and that is why they will want to take money off everybody else for that supposed purpose. And of course, it's the same when it comes to all the other inequalities, all the other supposed victimhoods. They're all about stealing other people's money. And that's essentially the bottom line of socialism, isn't it? I noticed earlier when you were talking about apologies for like the Balfour Declaration, for example, where's the apology for nationalizing or stealing the oil industry in the Middle East from the Western civilization that built it up? There's no apology, and of course there's no return, no reparations for that either. But of course that's to be expected, isn't it? So I think if you take Greta as an example, Greta's made the transition from being a green activist to being a Palestinian, pro-Palestinian activist, and but that isn't a surprising move at all. It's the same category, isn't it? No, the surprise would have been if she come out for Israel, and then she would have been absolutely, you'd never have heard from her again, would you? But because she is not just an activist, but she's treated with a religious fervor. She's venerated. It's got the same religiosity applied to it, and therefore she gets the support of those that support religiosity, as well as those that support the anti-Israel cause.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned if Greta Thunberg sort of like not necessarily like switch sides, but came out as like pro-Israel, and how much how much voice she would get. I mean, we know that. Take somebody like Mossab Hassan Youssef, somebody that grew up in Palestine, somebody that actually recognized the evil of Hamas. He is the son of Hamas official, somebody who recognized that, somebody who sort of switched and went to the other side, worked as a Shin Bet agent. And yeah, you hear from him here and there, but there's absolutely not this, nobody's genuinely, especially nobody from the pro-Palestinian side is going to him and saying, so what is Hamas exactly like? What, can we change it? No, nobody cares about genuinely asking about sort of what is it like to live there from somebody who might at least have a different different point of view. But I mean, we mentioned Greta, so we might mention the sort of the last part, which is the Green Alliance, the environmentalist Islamist alliance with people like Greta Thunberg, with people like the Green Party of the UK of Zach Polanski, or the Green Party of America, somebody like Jill Stein that I mentioned at the start, who, just so people don't forget, was endorsed by David Duke, the former national director of the KKK, who endorsed Jill Stein in the last election, the 2024 US presidential debate, precisely because of the Palestinian, I want to say Palestinian issue, but no, it's precisely because of the focus on anti-Semitism, specifically the anti-Jewish hatred coming from the Greens, coming from Jill Stein, and that is what deserved the endorsement of David Duke. So this is, I think I've even mentioned in the email that we might even mention a little bit the sort of the up and coming right-wing Islamist alliance with people like Tucker Carlson, but that might be for another time. But yeah, it seems like everybody is very eager to embrace. I mean, it is not surprising, right? The more we fall off the Western values, the more we abandon them, the more we fight against them. Yeah, Islamists seem like great allies. And that has been happening both pragmatically for a long time with alliance with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or even further, and now straight up almost ideological alliance with Islamists against, as I've said on the title, against Jews first, and then against all the Western values and anybody left to stand for Western values at the end. Marco, any last thoughts from you?
I mean, that's an important point. Islamism is not pro-civilization, it's not pro-freedom, it's not pro-life. It's about, it's just another way for somebody to have a political hold over people's life. It's about power. It's not about making your life better. And yeah, I wouldn't want to give the impression that I'm against Islam as such, as a religion. Dislike every religion. It's not just Islam. The problem with Islam is that if I have to criticize Islam as a whole, is that usually you do not have a response from the Muslim community against atrocity like, for example, 9/11 attacks, terrorist attacks in the West. There always seems to tacitly support this kind of violence that comes from the extremists among them. You don't see the outrage coming from the Islamic community, and that's a bit concerning, to be honest. I don't think they're doing themselves any favor. I mean, there are lots of people who are Muslims but do not take religion as the primary in their life, so that they are perfectly well integrated in our societies. The same as there are people who believe in the guy coming back from the dead or whatever other religion. It's not the problem that they're religious. It's a problem that if you follow a religion which strays into politics and bypasses the values that are recognized in the West after centuries of fights, if you like, of trying to better ourselves, and you push everything back towards the Middle Ages, well, that is not a positive development. And we've seen in the past that the alliances built on common hate do not last. They end up in slaughtering each other in the way. Just look at Hamas and the Palestinian Authority when Gaza was returned to the Arabs. What happens? They slaughter each other in order to become the rulers of the Gaza Strip. As I mentioned earlier on in the opening, look at what happened in Iran. The revolution took over the push from the leftists and this kind of people who were trying to appease the Islamists. The Islamists are not going to be appeased. There's only one solution for them. It's either you convert or you die.
Yeah. And my closing thoughts are, I'll end more or less how I open, in the sense that I want to focus on the fact that it's the combined tendencies of Islamists and socialists to do the same thing, which is to lecture the individual about how to live. It's to tell them exactly how they should live their lives, and they should live their lives according to the approved opinion of either of those two groups by their representatives. So that's why they both tend to lecture people, tell them what is banned or who should be ostracized. Take the BDS movement, examples of both of those things. It's essentially you should ostracize Jewish owners of businesses, and you should ban the products from Israel. That's two examples there. I think what we're seeing here is this unholy alliance, but it's an unholy alliance that's based on similar values, and those values are that the group decides what happens, and whatever basis it claims to represent the group, whether it's by religion or whether it's by some common hive mind idea of what the group thinks, i.e. socialism or communism, it's always taken by certain leaders of those two groups to dominate the rest, and every individual trying to go about their lives. And that's what makes them dangerous, and that's what makes them bedfellows as well.
And where can people find you?
Check out the Briefly Objective, sister channel to this. The link's in the description below for lots of short form content. Do go and check it out.
And let me also remind people about the ARCUK's mailing list. You can sign up with the link in the chat and the description. The Irreplaceable Spark Conference 2 is coming up next year. There's going to be a lot of information being put out in the upcoming days and upcoming weeks. So to stay on top of that, to get the best deal on your ticket, and to know first, since there are going to be some limits when it comes to discounts, at least I think I think there might be. So to stay on top of things, sign up for the ARCUK mailing list, and you'll be first to hear about anything that happens. So again, in the chat and in the description, you can find it. With that, we'll be, of course, back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective and the reality show. Thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching, and bye-bye.